And he came up with this fantastic
Upside down.
quote, absolutely fantastic. Personally, I think the idea that fake news on Facebook, of which is a small amount of content, influenced the election in any way is a pretty crazy idea. In a very slight defense of this, he did come back and say, actually, maybe I was wrong about this. Well, he was. But what I found striking at the time, looking as I was at the news and the engagement that was happening, was that the CEO of this company, of Facebook, also own Instagram, WhatsApp, could think this in the first place, or could think it enough to be able to make a public statement saying something to this effect. So what happened after that? What happened in 2017? So very briefly, we found out Facebook influencing opinion wasn't crazy. Fake engagement took over the USA, and no one noticed. I will go into that soon and show you an example. We saw further polarization, and by polarization I mean people being dragged either towards the left or the right. In the US it's quite a nice simple setup to look at on the screen. People are either more liberal and to the left, or they are more conservative and to the right. And filter bubbles, which is a really lovely way of describing something. It sounds nice, but it's not really very nice. I mean, it can be nice, but it's not nice when it's dictated by somebody else necessarily. Became these filter prisons. And what I mean by that is people, they became aware of the idea of filter bubbles. Now, I might be in a filter bubble myself, but they have no idea what they can do to affect themselves to get out of this filter bubble, if they are on these social platforms. What happened in 2018? Well, time moves on. We had Facebook's bad year. They have a lot of bad press last year. It will continue this year, is my prediction. Probably quite a safe prediction. Facebook influencing opinion has become normal. So a couple of years ago, it might be hard to remember now, I would speak to people and say, Facebook influences people, and people would say to me, no, not me. No, I use Facebook, and I only click on what I want to look at, and it doesn't influence me in any way. I don't think it influences anyone, really. It's only social media. And now I think the general mood is, if you ask someone, do you think social media platforms, and Facebook being the biggest and most mainstream, influence people's opinion in any way? I think the majority of people will agree. It's become normal. Fake engagement was rife during 2016, during 2017, during 2018, and it is rife today. We saw even further polarization of media outlets, and indeed quite likely of people, although I don't have data on that, just anecdotal. And also, we started to see regular people, so just everyday people, you and me, watching YouTube and slowly becoming radicalized. I could fill up an entire talk on individual examples of people who have become or have been affected in some way by the YouTube rabbit holes they have fallen down. But unfortunately, we only have minutes and not hours, so I cannot. However, before we do that, I will go over a brief history of what has worked for viral sites on Facebook. And when I say what works, what I mean is viral sites are very good at optimizing for the Facebook algorithm. So if you want to see what works on Facebook, the first place you should look is a viral site. And when I say a viral site, I mean something like Lad Bible, Unilad. If you've heard of any of them, you may or you may not have done. There are examples here. There are examples in every country. However, even before that, I will take us back to basics. This is a diagram I produced many years ago now, not that many, but a few, about a very basic look at how the Facebook algorithm works. So publishers needed to know this, and publishers didn't really understand this at the time. And I think more people have an idea now. But Interestingly, it still sort of works like this. It's a little bit more complicated. There's a lot of factors that go into deciding what you see on your Facebook feed when you go on there, if indeed you are on Facebook. We have quite a young crowd here, so I expect many of you may not be. Someone makes a post. Could be you. It could be a publisher. A news publisher puts a story on Facebook, and Facebook will look at that post and see, has anyone engaged with it? And by engagement, I mean public engagement, so likes, comments, shares, things that I could see. You've liked it, so I go on the post and I see, oh, you've made a like, you've made a like. Someone else has made a comment, someone has shared it, one of my friends has shared it maybe, so I might even identify that that individual person has shared it. And then you have invisible engagement as well, which Facebook knows about but we don't, which is things like clicks, which is things like just click on a photo to look at it, to enlarge it. In fact, Facebook, people, they use Facebook on the mobile, so people are using Facebook. Let's say you're going through your Facebook feed. Yeah, it's boring, boring, boring. And you slow down. And I slow down and I see a photo and I think, okay, and then I move on. So Facebook registers that. So they know that they measure engagement at quite a reasonably granular level. We don't capture everything that they capture. That invisible engagement, they know about the clicks, they know about, and the publishers know about. The public engagement, the likes, comments, and shares is public data, so we know about it. Facebook asks, shows the post to a few people. It says, hey, was there any engagement? And the post comes back and says, there's no engagement. And it asks again, oh, is there any engagement? Oh, there's one engagement. Okay, is there any engagement? There's 10, there's 20, there's 50, there's 100. And the more engagement there is, the more people that particular piece of content will be shown to. If there isn't any engagement, or there isn't very much, it will drop out of the newsfeed algorithm detection system very quickly. If there is more engagement, it will be served to more people and probably gather more engagement. Okay. Back to what has worked for viral sites. So, take back a few years. The first big algorithm optimization that publishers started doing on Facebook was publishing pictures. So news publishers were on Facebook. They were publishing their articles. They were publishing links. The link would maybe render with a picture, maybe not. And they would say, they would think, okay, well, we'll put this and people will see it. But the thing that was really popular at the time, this is going back 2-3 years, was pictures. Pictures got served to more people than any other piece of content. And viral sites found out about this, and they posted lots of pictures. And of course, cats, very popular, so you would see pictures of cats. At one point, Facebook was considered the #1 image sharing website, where people put their photos and you would go and see them. You don't really think of it like that anymore. In fact, it isn't like that anymore. But that's how it was at some point. 66 photos of your weekend away somewhere. Then we moved on to the kind of list-based article, listicle era. Very small eras, micro eras, in fact. 10 things about this thing. 10 pictures of cats, in fact. 25 cats that you never thought of seeing, but here they really exist. And that was very, very popular. In fact, BuzzFeed, you probably heard of BuzzFeed, they took advantage of that to such a great degree with their list articles. They did so much better than any other publisher at the time that Facebook had to change their algorithm specifically for that publisher because it's not very good for that publisher if people are drenched in their content and get bored of it, and it's not very good for Facebook if you're seeing the same thing over and over again. They don't even want you to see an article by one news publisher and then the same news publisher again next to it. You don't usually see that. It'd be quite unusual if you saw that. They want to space them out so you don't get fatigued with one individual piece of type of content or from one publisher. So, BuzzFeed and others, they worked around that. They optimized for engagement, and they started doing very specific lists of things, cats, dogs, all sorts. And that did very well. And it did very well in a way where these posts were targeted towards a narrower band of people, but it went deep. So everyone who might be interested in that thing. So cats that are around on this Aalto University campus. Here are 12 cats that you might have seen around. Everyone here would maybe click on that and read it, but no one outside is probably going to. Then we had a very small yet well-remembered clickbait era. This cat did something you won't believe. And then we move on to the video era. So Facebook introduced video on their site, and it was autoplay video, which was the big thing. Even on mobile, you would scroll and a video would start playing. This was fantastic, and they really boosted how important that was in the algorithm. So if you put any old video up, doesn't matter what's in it, it will get served to more people than a picture or a link or another piece of content. So they didn't have a lot of video content. Video content is expensive, so they dredged up, viral publishers dredged up videos that you've probably seen on old America's Funniest Home Videos, that kind of show, and they were extremely popular. And that was really the birth and the big rise in popularity of Unilad and Lad Bible. They made their fortune on stealing old videos, not necessarily asking for permission either, and putting them on their website. And people, the videos, I can see videos on my Facebook, this is fantastic, this is funny. And it worked for quite a long time. Then, of course, ran out of old videos, well, they don't run out, but then they started getting their own video content in, started finding funny video that you've made, and then asking you, hey, can we use this on our Facebook? Yeah, I get my 15 minutes Facebook fame. It's my video there. Everyone is looking at it. And then beyond that, we had the live video era, which hasn't remained necessarily super popular, but at some point, all of the most engaging video posts on Facebook were live videos. So any publisher who put live video on, it would get rocketed to the top and people would see it and click it and engage with it. It was really given a boost within the algorithm. There was plenty of news publishers who didn't necessarily want to do live video. They didn't have any content to do live video with, but they were all considering, hey, we need to do live videos because it works on Facebook. So now I'll give you a brief history. So that worked for viral publishers. And the interesting thing is, news publishers, more traditional publishers, they don't necessarily optimize for engagement at the same speed, but they do eventually. So what's worked for our customers and what's worked for people who I've been studying, news publishers, is exactly the same. Exactly the same thing. Not necessarily about cats, sometimes about cats, and it has worked well, but about any subject. But the point is here that even if they've latched onto this way of doing things a little bit later, with a lag, a couple of months, 4 months maybe, maybe longer, maybe less, they have pretty much done the same thing. So essentially, all of the publishers on Facebook who are publishing to Facebook are marching to the beat of this algorithm drum. Hey, this works. Eventually, we have to do it. Even if we don't want to, eventually, most publishers fall into line and end up working their content into a type of format that Facebook's algorithm favors. So why was any of that important? Why is it important me showing you pictures of cats? Because that algorithm, the fact that it exists and the fact that you have to optimize for that algorithm if you want to get engagement and you want to get seen and you want to get readers and you want to get traffic and you want to keep your news publication going, it's dictated by Facebook. So the Facebook algorithm has had a direct effect on the type of content that you have been reading for the past few years. They have been deciding in which way you will consume content. Okay, I shall move on to filter bubbles. We have done a side project a little while ago involving a lot of data, and I will attempt to explain it in as clear a way as possible. As I said, the content that you see, the content that you're exposed to online, not just on Facebook, but everything you see really, Google, any of the social platforms to greater and lesser degrees are influenced by algorithms. Type in a search, you're going to get something tailored to you because Google thinks that you might be searching for this thing based on other things that you've searched for in the past, and so on and so on and so on. Engagement, especially on social platforms here, it is the currency that buys exposure. And what I mean by that is, if you're not sure what I mean by that, engagement, likes, comments and shares, retweets, comments, likes on Twitter as well, they buy more reach for content on those social platforms. The more people that click like on something, the more people will see it. You might not get a direct one-to-one ratio with a post. A post might be a competition post. Hey, comment here, tag 3 of your friends. And the social platforms get wise to it, and they reduce the effectiveness of that particular type of engagement. But in general, more engagement buys you more people looking at your content. And of course, more people that you're served to, the more attention you have, and the more attention you have, the more influence you have. Because without any attention and anyone looking, you don't have any influence. If you could manipulate engagement, if you could manipulate the algorithms at a large scale, you essentially would be manipulating exactly what people are seeing. I'm going to take you through the strange tale of USA Today. And if you have heard of USA Today, you probably don't have any strong thoughts about it. You might have heard of it. You might have seen its logo somewhere. You might have tried visiting its website recently and find out that you can't actually visit it because of GDPR regulations, and you have to go to a special EU branded page that they've made. But there's a reason that you probably haven't got any strong opinions on them, because they are not really a particularly special publisher when it comes to news publishers. They are pretty neutral, almost completely neutral politically. They produce quite a lot of light entertainment stuff. They're not hard-hitting. They don't do big exposés. They're just middling to small-ish national US publisher, news publisher. They get 2 million engagement a month, which sounds like a lot, but it's okay. It's nothing special. So we track their engagement. We track their likes, comments, and shares on Facebook, and we saw that 2016, January 2 million, February 2 million, March just under 2 million, April 1.5 million, someone's job is on the line, back up to nearly 2 million, then doubled, went for a couple of months, and then went up even more, 8 million. This is very good. Somebody's got promotion. Somebody's feeling good. The social media manager, they've been doing hard work and everything is working well for them. Dropped back down in September, October, 11.5 million engagement a month, 22 million, 26, 32, 45 million. Now 45 million engagement a month makes them, or made them, the biggest publisher, news publisher, by engagement on Facebook in the US. It made them bigger than Fox News, which is the biggest kind of real as can be publisher. They bragged about how many followers they had, people who click like on the page. But unfortunately, many of them were fake. And our fake followers are nothing new to Facebook. There are lots of companies have paid for fake followers. Oh yeah, we need 10,000 fans. Well, let's pay $20 or $200 to some website, and we'll get these click farms to give us those. And that's fine. That's not engagement. That's just fans. What we had here, we had millions and millions of fake followers who were also clicking like on the posts of USA Today. So you can see the drop here, this big drop, excuse me, in followers is when Facebook deleted all or most of the fake followers. The interesting thing with them, like I said, was people were clicking like on these individual pieces of content, so on their posts. And I highlight one here. And the reason I highlight this particular one is because I look at unfortunately many more Facebook posts than anyone really actually ever needs to see. I look at a lot of them. I look at them every day. I look at a lot today. I can tell you what works at a glance. I can tell you, okay, this is going to do well. This is a well-made post. This should do well. I can tell you that this type of post will not do well. This is about as boring looking a post as you can get. If you see this on your Facebook newsfeed, unless you happen to be at that moment looking for an app to keep your spending on track, which would be very lucky, you will scroll past this. Everything about this says, hey, no one should really be engaging with this. Like this, don't even put it on your Facebook page. And it had 46,000 likes. Now, we recorded 46,000 likes. And when Facebook deleted all those followers, you went back to Facebook and you interrogate the back end of Facebook. You go through the API and you say, how many likes has this piece of content got? And now it reports 8.4 thousand. So all of that engagement between 46 and 8 was fake engagement. This is one day, or not even one day, about 23 posts. And USA Today, to give you an idea, they were posting 20 to 30 articles a day, 20 to 30 pieces of content a day. And the difference you see here between the blue and the red is the engagement that we captured at the time, and the blue is the engagement that if you go to Facebook now and you ask it, it will tell you how much engagement that particular piece of content had. So everything in between the blue and the top of the blue and the top of the red was deleted because it was fake engagement. This is one day, and not even a whole day, in fact. Give you an idea of what that looks like next to, as I said, Fox News, who's enormous, absolutely enormous, big publisher on Facebook. You can see that USA Today overtook them in terms of on-post engagement, so likes, comments, and shares, and then quite a dramatic drop. And what was really interesting here was this didn't happen at the election. It was increasing in the run-up to the US election 2016, but it continued to increase and increase and increase and increase, as if someone had started something rolling and then they couldn't stop it, which doesn't really make any sense, but I don't really have an explanation. So all of that, millions and millions. I mean, look, they have 200 million post engagement in that time. A huge percentage of it was fake. So what happens when all that fake engagement happens? When Facebook is deciding, I'm going to show you've got a certain number of spaces in your newsfeed. Everyone looks at a certain number of posts on Facebook who uses Facebook every day. I've seen various numbers bandied about, but let's say it's about 300. People scroll through about 300 posts on their Facebook feed every day, and there's probably 3,000 posts vying for attention, vying for a spot in your news feed. Which ones are going to make it through? The algorithm decides. The algorithm decides, and one of the things that it uses to decide whether this post will make it into your newsfeed or the other post is the engagement level of that post. So if that horrible, boring article comes up and an article from New York Times comes up, well, you might want to see that New York Times article, but actually you'll see this article from USA Today because it's got loads of engagement. So we know that this algorithm manipulation, which is what it is, happened at scale, a really large scale. And this is only one that we noticed. And we noticed it because it got so big that we said, hey, what is happening here? Before that, in the run-up to this, we were saying, hey, USA Today are doing really well. I think we see them every day on the board. But why them? I pointed out that they were right in the middle politically. They're a light entertainment publisher. They're not pushing any particular agenda. So why them? If you were going to manipulate the algorithm, why would you choose them? So my theory was that by inflating their engagement, it was more likely to pollute news feeds for people who were generally on the left and who would generally be looking at mainstream media, New York Times, Washington Post, all the ones you've heard of. But we couldn't show it. We couldn't prove it. How could we prove it? We think that. I might think that. But if you look at this is a really great chart, by the way. You can go online. You can find this media bias chart.com. In fact, I think it's found now at Ads Fonte Media. This Vanessa Otero has made this, and she updates it fairly regularly. And this is based on this is where the publishers sit on the spectrum of how, shall we say, how good they are to how bad they are is the easiest way from top to bottom, and how left they are to how right they are, obviously on the left and right. And this is all based on content. So they have actual people analyzing the content from these publishers and deciding where they're going to go. And if you look for USA Today, you will find it, and you will find it in there somewhere, I hope. I think you can see it, the little round blue ball right in the center. It doesn't make fake stuff. It doesn't do much one way or the other, left or right. Maybe they've got a couple of opinion columns which might have some kind of political leaning, but it sits right in the middle. So why wouldn't it affect all of those around it rather than just on the left or just the mainstream media? If we look at where it sits, excuse me, if we look at where it sits according to this political spectrum media landscape from Pew Research, this makes it a little bit clearer, because what you can see is the mainstream media is kind of bunched up just to the left of center. And then you see there's quite a big gap before you get to Fox News on the right. And then you have to go quite far right ideologically before you get to the next kind of bunch of publishers, Drudge Report, The Blaze, and Drudge Report there as well, which are all popular, all quite big, all right-leaning, but quite heavily right-leaning. So this is done by user surveys. Pew Research is also a pretty good resource. We wanted to visualize some of the data to try and give an idea of what these try and prove, for a start, people who interact with USA Today would be more likely to be looking at the mainstream sites and less likely to be looking at those ones that are quite far ideologically to the right. So this is a side project. We went and gathered some data. We did it kind of slowly, as fast as we possibly could, which was quite slow. We looked at a very small set of data. So I put these big numbers in here, 48,000 of the top Facebook pages. And in order just to have any kind of workable number, we just said, okay, in terms of talking about this, which is a Facebook metric, let's just take these pages. Let's take the top 48,000. And that's our cutoff. Any small pages we'll just ignore. We looked at like 100 posts from each page. We looked at all of the likes on every single post from all of those pages. And that included about 200 million users, and it gave us about 3.3 billion data points. So they sound like big numbers, but this is actually quite a small study, essentially. And we applied some machine learning to make sense of all of that data. What we did with those likes is we would take a like, and with every like, Facebook gives you a user ID. And we can see, I can't query your user ID, so I can't find your user ID and say, what other pages have you liked? What other content have you liked? I can't do that. But what I can do is I can look across all of the other data, find your user ID, and see if I can find your user ID on other likes. And I can say, oh, you have liked this page, this page, this page, and this page. Now, we weren't interested in the people, so what we did is we took the user ID and we chucked it out, hashed it, and we made it a code. And then so we can say, right, this person X has liked this. Have they liked another page? And if they liked another page as well, if they liked to post on another page, we took that as one signal. It's a very, very, very weak signal, but we took it as one signal. And we had a lot of signals. We had a lot of weak signals. Now, in terms of how much data it took us, we take data every day from Facebook. One of the things we battled with in the past is collecting Facebook data harvesting, which is a horrible kind of way of talking about it, but that's what it is. We take data from Facebook every day, and we work hard to keep under the limits set by their API, but we try to keep it very efficient because we take a lot of data. We take data in real time. We go and ask about each post, have you got any engagement? No. We wait a minute and we go back, have you got any engagement? Yes, 1, and we record it, 1. And we do that for over 100,000 publishers worldwide and all of the posts that they're making. In order to get this data, it took us 3 months of non-stop data collection. And we had to buy an extra hard drive to stick it all on, and that's what we did. So it's not a small task. We know what we're doing, and it took us a long time. We were just doing it kind of as a side project, though. We didn't have a strong motivation. And one thing I noticed from an article where they were looking at outside actors harvesting data from Facebook, this is slightly different data they're looking at, so it's not an exact direct comparison, but this quote, an engineer at Facebook notified the company in October 2014, so quite a long time ago, the entities that happen to have Russian IP addresses had been using this API key to pull over 3 billion data points per day. So you really need to know what you're doing and have some motivation and have some people on it to be able to pull that much data every day. So that's big numbers. Right, I'll show you, instead of having pages and pages of text, I'll show you what it looks like. But before I show you what it looks like, I'll give you a rough idea of what we're looking at. So we looked at likes. We only looked at likes. This is what we processed the first time round on these pages. And as I said, when a person liked something, we didn't know who the person is, but we know, can we match that same user ID or code for that user anywhere else? The more signals we had between pages, the stronger the relationship that we theorized between those pages. Here, we took USA Today's page. And the first thing we did was we said, okay, what are the pages that have the strongest relationship to USA Today? I think we cut it off at, I don't know how many pages are on this particular thing, between 100 and 150 maybe. And we used TensorBoard and TensorFlow and some of their algorithm sorting to not only look at the relationship between USA Today and these pages, but also for it to look at the relationship of these pages amongst themselves. And it started grouping them. It was fantastic. We put all this data in and something that made sense, started to make sense, came out. So if we look at USA Today, we can see this is essentially its filter bubble visualized. So people who interact with USA Today, what other pages would they be interacting with, or have they interacted with? Not each individual person, but across many, many, many people. So the TensorBoard started arranging these, and you can see it's put them in some kind of order. So it's put the finance pages together. You see up in the top left corner, Yahoo Finance, Business Insider, and well, Business Insider is really a viral site, but purports to be business. And some other financial pages are hidden under there. You've got sports pages kind of together. You've got the news pages together. And the thing I noticed about this is I could probably, there's not many pages on here that I don't recognize the names of. You can't see all of them, of course, but you will be able to recognize half of them, I would have thought. These are mainstream news pages. And then we did the same, and we took one of the pages from the right. So we took Breitbart, for example. I don't know if you've heard of Breitbart, but Breitbart is more right-leaning, but it is popular. It is a big, popular page. And we looked at the filter bubble for Breitbart. And we saw that most of the pages that share an audience with them are not mainstream news sources. You do have a few of them. You have the New York Post. You have a couple of others. Fox News, of course, is in there because Fox News is I would say, it's like the gateway to going to these kind of pages. You can look on Fox News. You're probably quite likely to see a Breitbart post. You see a Breitbart post, you interact with that. You are more likely to see these served to you from the Facebook algorithm. So this is what Breitbart's filter bubble might look like visualized. And this is, of course, based not at all on the content, but just on the user behavior, just on the things people have actually done, clicking like on post from one and clicking like on a post from another. And the striking thing is, I mean, I recognize the names of many of these pages, unfortunately, but these are not mainstream news pages. So on Facebook, you interact with Breitbart, you are more likely to be served your worldview, your news, your content from these news providers than from the mainstream publishers. One other thing we noticed was that Russia Today and the New York Post had a really similar audience. Every which way we used, all the different settings that you can use within TensorBoard to organize these pages, it kept these two very, very close together. So for some reason, I'm not sure if it's the lack of data, I wouldn't have thought so, they're both quite popular pages, they stayed really close together. They have a very, very similar audience. We don't know why, and we didn't look into it. We haven't got the resources to do so, and I wouldn't really know where to start. Okay, so that is what a filter bubble might look like visualized. And with the data that we took, what else could we potentially do? Of course, we can uncover popular filter bubbles for anything. If we take a page and we've looked at that page, we click on the page and you put the name in, Coca-Cola, because Coca-Cola was there. What are people who interact with Coca-Cola like? They like other soft drinks as well, and they like brands. People who click on, you go to an airline, you click on the airline, what are the other pages that people like? People who like airline stuff like stuff from other airlines. It kind of makes sense, but it also gives some surprises. You'll click on something to do with sports, and you'll get a bunch of sports blogs that you didn't know about. So it can be a useful tool. You could also distribute things along a spectrum. If you took two pages, if we took Breitbart and USA Today, I mean USA Today aren't right to the left, they're in the middle, but you took USA Today and you took Breitbart to the right, and you put all the pages in between them, you could see which ones they were attracted to the most. So you could organize the pages in between them and create a spectrum based solely on the user behavior. And of course we can compare audiences. We can say, right, well this is what the Breitbart audience is, this is what the USA Today audience is there any overlap at all? Now if we can do this as a side project with publicly available data, is it really feasible that Facebook didn't? That they couldn't? They have access to a great deal more data than we do. Is it possible that they haven't already? Now, I'm not trying to sow this kind of narrative, Facebook is evil, and at the end, everybody get off Facebook before you leave the room. Not at all. But these kind of things were possible for us without any motivation, any nefarious motivation at least, no business motivation. I mean, we might have tried to make this into a product, but we didn't. So imagine what is possible with access to a much bigger data set. You could really get some interesting information out of that would be usable. And if you had a team of data scientists, we just had 3 people in the office, like working on this out of hours. Now, one of the things we do when we come up with a new idea in our company is we kind of sit around and we think, what could be the worst thing we could do with this data? It's our Dr. Evil kind of moment. What could be the worst thing we do with this data? If we had this, what could we do that would be like bad? And the depressing thing is that everything that we come up with, it probably has already been done. There probably is someone with a motivation, outside actors or whoever it is, maybe for a business reason, maybe for other reasons, political reasons. It's quite likely that someone hasn't just thought of it, they've already thought of it, they've already done it, and they've already done it to a much greater degree than we have the capabilities to do. No, it's not going. So why is this relevant to you? If you're not on Facebook, maybe it's not quite so relevant. That's good. However, algorithms do affect everything that you see, wherever you are online. They do affect Instagram, for example. Although Instagram is only serving you stuff most in your feed of people that you follow, it's still sorting those out. So it's still doing the thing that Facebook was originally doing, which is pushing you towards certain friends and pulling you away from certain other friends. So there might be someone you actually want to see their content, but because you haven't interacted or because that person didn't post at the right time, you might be less likely to see their stuff and more likely to see someone that you actually clicked once on, and they happen to have a hashtag even, and then Instagram is thinking, oh, you like that kind of stuff, so I'm going to serve you stuff like that. So it can be pushing and pulling you away on a personal level, but not to the same degree as Facebook, where you can get served content from anyone. Does it affect people who just read Breitbart? If you don't read Breitbart, isn't that all right? Well, here's the thing. I don't think so, because what we've seen is the hop from mainstream to the peripheries and to being pushed out very quickly, ideologically, is very small. It's a very small hop. You only need to, like Fox News, like you might not like them, you might like them. They have an enormous amount of content that's just entertainment content, sports content. If you are into basketball, if you are into any of the American sports, if you're in America, you've probably interacted with something from Fox News. And then Facebook is registering, oh, you like Fox News, okay. And then eventually you might see something that's a little bit more political, and you might ignore it. But over time, you might see more and more of it. One of the things we do is we look at all of the output from tabloid publishers on the same screen. And people don't consume news in that way, but if you look at it in that way, hey, this is their agenda. They might not even be thinking about it like that, but this is their agenda. This is all the stories they have today that people are interacting with. And without fail, on something like the Daily Mail, a tabloid, Daily Express, something, there will be a mixture of really happy, light entertainment stuff and terrible, fear-inducing, catastrophic posts. This terrible crime happened. Something about Brexit, something about immigrants. So it's this like scaring you, reassuring you, scaring you, reassuring you. And if anything works quite well for the Facebook algorithm, it's not necessarily related to the Facebook algorithm, it's related to what people want to interact with, and that's stuff that scares you or promotes some kind of negative outrage or fear within you. That works even better than lovely pictures of cats, which make you say, oh, that's nice and cute. The stuff that scares people works really well, and of course publishers optimize for that. And if you click on one of those, which it's quite likely to happen at some point, it's very easy to get dragged to the peripheries, and then very, very easy to get to the extremes. And once you're there, that's going to dominate, that's going to be your worldview. Your newsfeed is going to just be full of these horrible stories. And you can kind of see it in the comments sections of tabloid newspapers on Facebook. You go into a post and you look at the comments on a crime that's happened, and you'll see people, and they've been exposed to hundreds and hundreds of these crimes. And so in their point of view, over the last year, it's like going outside of your house is really dangerous, because that is their worldview based on what they're looking at on their Facebook feed. It's really, really, really easy. And I'm not saying this hasn't happened in the future, but in the past, before social platforms and before you might be served a lot of your content from one source, you would maybe go into the newsagent. You would go into the newsagent, you would see all the front pages there together. So you are kind of forced to see a balance of the headlines. And you might see the Daily Mail, or you might see a tabloid, and not to pick on them, but you might see tabloid headlines, extreme kind of headlines every day, but you wouldn't see anything outside of that necessarily. You wouldn't see extreme content. Whereas on Facebook, it's a lot more common, and you can be pushed into, imagine walking into a newsagent and seeing only tabloids with really terrible headlines. And in fact, not just the ones that you've heard about, but loads and loads and loads and loads of them. And that's what it's like. Yeah, it isn't just Facebook as well. Like I said, I don't have time, unfortunately, or fortunately, to go into YouTube. But YouTube's algorithm is going to be under a lot more fire, or a lot of attention focused on it this year, I believe. If you haven't heard of the story of Bucky Wolf, this is a really good individual example. It doesn't prove anything, of course. It's just one individual anecdotal example. But this was, excuse me, this was a gentleman who, does anyone know this story? Have you heard of this Bucky Wolf? Anyone? So this a very unfortunate story. This guy, he it's not necessarily to do with YouTube, but he was kind of radicalized, let's say, along the lines. Maybe he has some mental problems as well. So I'm not blaming YouTube for everything here, but the upshot is he started thinking that people could shapeshift into being lizards, and people were after him, and he ended up taking a sword and stabbing his own brother through the head and killing him. And he was probably some effect, something that didn't help was his exposure to extreme content on YouTube. This guy, you can go to this Twitter post. In fact, this Travis person, he went and looked. You can go and look yourself at this guy's likes. What content has he liked over time? And at the beginning, it was normal stuff, music videos. And then gradually moved on to slightly weirder stuff, even more weird stuff, really extreme stuff. There's a Twitter thread there. I'm not going to go through it now, but you can go look it up on your mobile right now, in fact, if you like. Okay. We are more or less at the end. The bad news, from my point of view, is that this data is no longer available from Facebook. So I cannot replicate this study. We did do a second study after this, and we didn't have access to these likes. So what we did is we looked at comments instead. And it gave us a slightly different view, because you don't have to like a page to comment on it. You might actually not, you might really dislike it. You might be going on there to argue with someone. And so it gave us a different view, a very interesting one. And we did it with a bigger data set, in fact. We have it. We have the data somewhere. It's not currently active, unfortunately, so there isn't any access to it. Otherwise, I would post a link and you could go and look yourself. The bad news, from my point of view, is that you can't get this data anymore from Facebook. They've clamped down on it. But the good news, also from my point of view, is that you can't get this data anymore from Facebook. You can get quite a lot, but one good thing Facebook did is that they took the ability to look at a like or a reaction, so a single piece of engagement, and attach a user ID to it. So they took that away for comments, and I believe they have taken it away for likes and reactions now. I'm not 100% sure, but that's when you're taking it at the API level. So if you go onto a post and you click, oh, who's liked this, you'll see a list of names, but I don't think you can take that from the back end anymore, which is bad from a researcher's point of view, but also very good from security kind of point of view. And again, I mean, it's the same thing. Unfortunately, bad actors and also tech company naivety. Facebook, if you want access to this kind of data now, I believe that the system is that you have to write, if you're a researcher, you have to write to them and tell them exactly what you want, and they will go through the process and approve it or not approve it. And if you do get it, they will give you that exact set of data on a laptop, which you can open and only look at that data, and then you have to close and send back to them. So they've locked it down, but it makes it much more difficult to do actual research on their stuff, which would, I think, be good for society in general. However, the good news is that all this public pressure, which didn't seem to be having an effect a couple of years ago, has had an effect on tech companies, and it should, and it's quite reassuring in a way. It's still not enough, but it does. It has an effect, and it makes them have a think about what they're doing with this enormous amounts of data that they have. Okay, I'll wrap up. In conclusion, unfortunately, it's really like it's not a very happy conclusion. So the platforms that rely on algorithms do remain open to abuse. Facebook have done some things to stop you getting some data, but in terms of the fake engagement that we saw, that's one example that we recorded that we noticed. The idea that it isn't happening all the time is strange to me. I would make a bet, 20 euros, something I can afford, that it is not just, it hasn't stopped, it continues. Engagement, fake engagement on Facebook, definitely on Twitter. Twitter is like completely full of bots and a lot of fake engagement, and you see more articles about it in the media now. The only reason we noticed that one was because it was so obvious. It was so obvious. This cannot be real. So, from my point of view, and really, it should be everyone should be thinking there's no reason to believe that this isn't constantly happening across all of the platforms. Look at that unopened, unhatched egg on Instagram. Yeah, what a great marketing campaign. There's that kind of thing. Imagine that kind of thing, not necessarily that number one, getting to the number one, but just increasing a bunch of posts. It's just happening all the time. So when you see stuff on these platforms, and it's the new thing, it's like a trend or something that other people have seen, you could look at it in a questioning way. Where did this originate from, and why am I seeing it? I have a reading list, if you want to take a picture of it and have a look. There is one article, or one PDF, in fact, you can download, that I would recommend to anyone over all of these things. And that is a very, very interesting document, very accessible, the Handbook of Russian Information Warfare. Not to pick on Russia, but that particular item is really interesting and gives an idea of what has been happening. It basically says some of the stuff that I've been saying, but hey, here's some of the methods that have been used and are being used across not just social media, but across other forms of information as well. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Let's take a few questions, if anybody has. Really hard to see the audience from here, but I'm sure you are still there.
Everyone has their hands up, we just can't see it.
Yeah. And Steve, you need to repeat the question because they don't have a mic. There seems to be a person somewhere. Just behind the light. Oh, go ahead, please.
Okay, let me summarize so other people can hear. So the question was, in the Pew Research political spectrum that we saw, there was an asymmetry between the grouping of mainstream publishers on the left and then quite a jump until you get to these big pages on the right. Do we see the same thing in the filter bubbles? Yes, absolutely. That is exactly what we see. And we were we expected to see it, but we weren't sure. But it's exactly what we saw. And not only did we see that, but it uncovered hundreds of pages that we didn't know about, that were big. But we had no idea about them, who they were, because they weren't part of our filter bubbles, personal filter bubbles. So you will see more of them have become mainstream during the kind of Trump presidency. You'll see more Diamond and Silk and like these peripheral players who have become really big and have become like, let's say, the new mainstream and would join those others. But I wouldn't say that they've come towards the center. I would say that those other ones have, moved even more to the right. But it is exactly, we saw the same thing. Yes.
Okay. Anybody else? One more, please. You, sir.
Yes. Turns out that these filters on a feed or whatever, they do actually increase engagement on the platform. So that if you have just a list of everything that your friends are done, it is very quickly quite boring. There's a lot of things that you don't want to see. And this is one of the reasons why they have, in the first place, why they have these filters. And I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people who wouldn't want, or a lot of people on the platform
Okay, so to summarize the question, the Facebook algorithm and algorithms, in fact, are on many social platforms. They exist because otherwise the content that you see would be really boring if you just saw it in a list. So in a way, they're a good thing for the user. So what's the solution in terms of news? And it's a great question, which I really have no idea what the answer is. And if I did, I would be maybe typing to Facebook, hey, I've got this great idea, or making my own social platform. But the only thing that I can say in response to that is, and bear in mind, from my point of view, the company I work for relies on news being on Facebook. If there was no news on Facebook, we would have to come up with a new business model. Okay, that would be quite fun, but it would also be a little bit worrying. But the more I see of the data, the more I see reasons to think, hey, maybe there should be a separation. The algorithm on the personal stuff, fine, but the separation of news, like maybe news shouldn't be in Facebook at all. And so I've got this dilemma. On the one hand, I want news to do well on Facebook so the company does well. And on the other hand, I'm thinking maybe there shouldn't be any news on Facebook or Twitter at all. Of course, it's not going to happen, but that would maybe be, if I was the tyrant in charge, maybe I would pull things to the side a little bit more. However, having a think about it as I'm giving my answer, there are a few startups and services out there that aim to kind of give you a news feed that's not dictated by an algorithm. And of course, it's probably dictated by their own algorithm, or it's dictated by one simple one that you've made yourself by saying what you like. However, I would say that that's a better thing. If you decide you want to see site X, Y, and Z, then to me that's possibly better than someone else deciding you should see X, Y, Z.
Okay. Guess it's time to wrap it up for today. Thanks again, Steve.
Thank you.
Very much for coming over and explaining this fascinating world. And for the rest of us, 1 week ahead, we're going to have Carlo Simojoki from A-Klinikka talking about addiction and social media, which is going to be as interesting as today. And we switch back to Finnish then, just to let you know. And don't hesitate to check out the website, and as we had a lot of high schoolers here, then feel free to look out at where you can study actually this kind of things and these kind of phenomena. On my behalf, thank you very much, and I'm sure Steve will stick around here for a while after we officially end.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you.